Hello and welcome back. Today we're looking at a script that breaks down the legal fight between Candace Owens and Turning Point USA.
Right. It gets into the cease and desist, the NDA, and this whole idea of actual malice.
Exactly. It's a really dense, high-stakes topic, and honestly, it wants to be a legal thriller.
It really does, which is why the very first thing we have to talk about is a pretty big structural issue.
Yeah, it's the narrative momentum, or the lack of it, in a key spot.
You're talking about the part where it stops for housekeeping, right?
I am. The script starts off so strong, it's great.
Yeah, the hook is fantastic. Major personality, huge legal trouble, career on the line.
It builds this amazing tension, you know? It talks about a trap being set, and you're leaning in, you're waiting for that other shoe to drop.
And then?
And then it just screeches to a halt so the author can thank someone for a $100 donation.
Yeah, that part. It felt like watching a movie where the hero's hanging off a cliff and the villain's about to cut the rope.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly we cut to a commercial. It just completely kills the vibe.
It's so jarring. The writer goes on this whole digression about the widow's mite and comparing donations.
Look, the sentiment is nice. It's great they care about their audience.
Of course.
But in terms of writing a compelling piece, it's just fatal to the pacing. You can't do that.
It basically tells the audience, hey, the story isn't that urgent.
Exactly. If you can pause the whole legal drama for that, then the danger can't be that real. So, I think the core feedback here is that the momentum of a high-stakes legal argument, it really relies on maintaining a singular driving focus.
You just can't have these unrelated deviations.
So what's the fix? Do they just cut the thank yous? That feels a bit cold.
No, not cut. Relocate. This is a classic editorial move.
Okay.
You take all that administrative stuff, the thank yous, the personal stories, and you just move it to the end.
A postscript, sort of.
Make it a postscript. After the climax, after you've made your case, then you say, hey, stick around, I want to thank some folks.
That keeps the legal thriller part intact.
Totally. Imagine the difference. The script goes from calling her a narcissistic psychopathic dingbat, which we'll get to.
Oh, we'll get to that.
And then it immediately pivots to, oh, thank you for the money. Instead, you go from that accusation straight into the proof.
It keeps the audience in the mindset of a juror, you know? You don't want them thinking about their wallets. You want them thinking about the verdict.
Which actually leads us right into the second big issue, the tone.
The narcissistic psychopathic dingbat issue.
That's the one. This is our second major point. When you're discussing a serious legal concept like actual malice, your credibility is everything.
And it's tied directly to how analytical you can stay.
Yes, and I struggled with this while reading it because, on the one hand, the writer clearly knows their stuff.
Oh yeah, the breakdown of public figure versus private figure defamation is really solid.
But then, every other paragraph, it's these schoolyard insults. Candy Stinking Owens, asking if she has a functioning brain.
It's a huge juxtaposition. It gives you this kind of tonal whiplash.
1 minute I feel like I'm listening to a legal expert. The next it's, a wrestling promo.
And the weakness there is that by using all these personal attacks, the writer actually makes themselves sound less credible.
They sound like a participant, not an analyst.
Right. They sound like they have a personal axe to grind.
But you could argue it's for entertainment, right? It's commentary. Insults can get clicks.
They might, but they cost you authority. If your goal is to prove this lawsuit is a serious, unavoidable threat,
you can't sound like you just don't like her. The facts have to be the weapon, not the adjectives.
So you're suggesting a change in tone to something more inevitable.
Inevitability. That is the perfect word. Treat this whole thing like a force of nature. It's coming, whether you like the person or not.
So, for example, instead of saying she got smacked down with his cease and desist letter.
Which sounds a bit childish.
it does.
You say something like, she was confronted with the legal realities of her contract.
Ooh, that's colder and scarier.
It sounds so much more professional. It's not a fight anymore, it's a procedure.
I see what you mean. And instead of asking, what is wrong with you, you dingbat?
You ask a strategic question.
Like, why would a broadcaster ignore an active non-disparagement clause for months?
Exactly. That question is so much more devastating. It implies either total arrogance or massive incompetence, but it does it without calling a single name.
It actually lets the audience draw an even harsher conclusion on their own.
It is much harsher. It treats her as a rational person who made a catastrophic error, which is way more interesting to analyze.
And that brings us to the core of the script's argument, which is, I think, completely brilliant, but it's totally buried.
You mean the actual malice trap?
Yes. Let's talk about this because it is the most important part of this whole critique.
Right. So, for anyone listening, actual malice is the standard. It's the huge hurdle you have to clear to sue a public figure.
You can't just prove they were wrong. You have to prove they knew they were wrong.
Or that they acted with, a reckless disregard for the truth.
Which is almost impossible to prove. You basically have to read their mind.
Exactly. And that's why this script is sitting on a gold mine.
The meeting.
The meeting with Erica Kurt. The script points out she met with Owens and gave her a binder of evidence.
And the writer's argument is that this wasn't just a friendly chat.
No, it was a strategic masterstroke. They were establishing actual malice. They handed her the truth on paper so she could never, ever claim ignorance later.
That changes everything. It turns a messy public fight into a calculated legal entrapment.
It's the whole story. But in the current script, you kind of have to dig for that point.
It's just buried in the middle, like it's a minor detail.
It's treated like a side note after a long bit about reaction videos. The weakness here is all about structure. That trap is the climax of the story. It's the smoking gun.
So it needs to be moved up, way up.
100%. The suggestion is to reorder the entire thing to present that actual malice trap as the central hook.
So you introduce the cease and desist letter.
And then immediately you define actual malice. You set up the legal challenge.
Okay, so here's the letter. Now to win, they have to prove malice, which is nearly impossible. Here's how they did it.
Precisely. You set the impossible bar, and then you show the audience exactly how it was cleared.
And you have to connect the dots explicitly.
You link the binder of papers from the meeting directly to the line in the legal letter about calculating damages. You create that causal link.
She got the binder on Tuesday, she ignored it on Wednesday, so on Thursday, the damages became willful.
Now, that is a powerful narrative. It's almost forensic.
It turns the whole script into a detective story.
The case of the willful defamation, it's so much more engaging.
Okay, so speaking of things that happen, we need to address the third-party sources. The script leans pretty heavily on clips from Nick Fuentes.
It does. And look, politics aside, in this specific context, he's being used as a source for the timeline of the NDA.
Right, but the way the script frames it feels, I don't know, a little congratulatory.
That's a good way to put it. You see phrases like, Nick Fuentes, dude, get the whole stuff right, and credit where credit is due.
It feels less like citing a source and more like cheering on an ally.
And that's the trap. When you're doing analysis, third-party clips need to be evidence, not just validation for your own opinion.
Yet the script spends time praising him for unleashing on. It focuses on his emotion, not the facts he's presenting.
Which, again, goes back to that tone problem. It hurts the writer's objective authority.
So the suggestion is to treat the clip like an exhibit in court.
Exactly. You wouldn't say to the jury, hey, check this guy out, he really let her have it.
No, you'd say, please direct your attention to the timeline established in this recording.
You strip out the praise, you frame the segment as the discovery phase of your commentary. The specific value Fuentes adds is that date discrepancy.
The December 2nd termination versus the December 14th NDA.
That gap is the key fact. So use the clip to prove the gap, and that's it.
So instead of Fuentes joined the critics, you say Fuentes' research highlights a critical discrepancy in the timeline.
Yes, and honestly, I'd cut the preamble. We don't need a list of all the other YouTubers who agree. The audience cares about the data, not the roster.
Get the date and move on. Keep the pace tight.
That makes sense. It keeps the focus on the argument.
Now, there is one part where the writer tries to explain why Turning Point waited so long to sue, and that felt a little weak to me.
The grace argument?
Yeah, the script speculates that they waited out of grace, or because they were just being nice.
It uses phrases like, I reckon Turning Point let that happen.
Which feels like a guess, and a pretty strange one, considering we just spent 10 minutes talking about how they set this ruthless malice trap.
It completely contradicts the character of the plaintiffs that the script itself has just established. In a piece about contract law, using grace as an explanation just undermines the entire legal strategy you've been outlining.
So what's the better theory? Is it about money?
It's always about money and strategy. The suggestion here is to reframe that delay entirely. It wasn't about grace. It was about maximizing damages.
Ah, so they weren't waiting for an apology. They were waiting for the bill to get big enough to be worth collecting.
Exactly. You reframe that grace period as a damages accumulation period. Every single time she went on air and violated that NDA.
Cha-ching.
The cash register went cha-ching. If you frame it that way, the delay isn't a weakness. It's a sign of supreme confidence.
That is so much darker.
But so much more compelling, right? and it fits the facts better.
It really does. Why stop her from running up the tab?
It also solves another little problem in the script, the part that calls the subject's lawyer stupid.
Right, which is just kind of a cheap shot.
It's easy, but the more interesting angle, and the one that actually reinforces the main argument,
Is that the lawyer wasn't stupid. The lawyer was powerless.
oh, I love that. The client just wouldn't listen.
Exactly. You contrast the idea of a bad lawyer with the reality of an uncontrollable client. If the lawyer told her to stop and she refused,
That's even more proof of willful malice.
it all ties back to the central theme. The trap, the timeline, the refusal to stop. It all points in one direction,
Which brings us to the end, the conclusion.
which, as it's written now, is a little passive. Watch the crash. Wait and see.
It feels like the writer just ran out of gas and said, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
It kind of fizzles out. A piece like this needs to stick the landing.
It has to. It needs to synthesize everything into a final, powerful takeaway.
A closing argument.
The suggestion is to create a much more active conclusion. Summarize the legal jeopardy, remind the listener of the specific stakes, that 12-month NDA tail, the accruing damages.
So what would that sound like?
Something like this. She signed the NDA, she took the meeting, she saw the binder receipts, and she kept talking. That isn't just a mistake. Legally, that is the definition of malice.
Wow, yeah, that hits hard. It summarizes the entire critique in a few sentences.
And then you give the audience something to watch for, not just subscribe, but something active.
A specific prediction.
Yes, like, if she goes silent on Monday, we'll know the letter worked. If she doubles down, we'll know the lawsuit is coming.
That's great. It turns the audience into observer. They're not just waiting, they're watching for specific signs.
It engages them beyond the video itself.
So, okay, looking at this as a whole, we're taking a script that has really fantastic research,
The bones are great.
and we're just tightening all the screws, elevating it from a commentary rant to a real piece of legal analysis.
That's the goal. So let's just recap the main action items for the rewrite.
First, structure. Move the donation talk to a postscript. Protect that narrative tension at all cost.
Second, tone. Ditch the personal insults. Adopt the tone of a cold, objective analyst. Let the facts do the work.
Third, the actual Malice hook. That's the star of the show. Get it on stage early and make it the central plot.
Fourth, sources. Use them as data points, not as allies. Keep it clinical.
Fifth, the motive. Replace the weak grace theory with the much stronger damages accumulation.
And finally, the conclusion. End with a strong summary statement and a concrete prediction.
You know, if the writer makes these changes, this isn't just another commentary.
No, it's not. It becomes a really sharp piece of analysis. The research is there, the insight is there. It just needs the discipline in the writing to match it.
I would really love to see version 2 of this.
Me too. We strongly encourage the listener. Apply these shifts. Rework the script with this structure and tone in mind, and send it back to us. We'd love to see it.
Absolutely.
That's all for this critique. Thanks for listening, and keep writing.